Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Erik Voss, and this is a full movie breakdown of all the details you missed in Weapons, the 2025 Zach Cregger horror film that is quickly becoming the surprise hit of the summer. A well-deserved hit that I really need to revisit and do a proper analysis of. I rushed through another video trying to succinctly summarize the ending, the plot structure, and some interesting points I think the director was trying to convey, but to be honest, I really should have taken some more time because that video was just incomplete in a lot of ways, and I don't want that to be our final word on this great film. There are just too many cool details in this film that we need to dig into more fully. And before we get into it, I'll mention again at the top of this video that New Rockstars would like to cover horror movies more, but we also don't want to stop covering big new releases like Weapons or Sinners or 28 Years Later here on the New Rockstars channel. So if we do launch a new horror specific channel, we would probably be covering horror classics and releases that are at least a year old. So my question is, would you be interested in subscribing to a channel like that? Let us know in the comments below. Okay, Weapons opens with a drum beat over black and narration from an 11-year-old girl that the script names Maddie.
This is a true story. It happened right here in my town 2 years ago.
If Maddie is 11 now, that would mean she was 9 2 years ago, making me wonder if she might be the Madeline McNulty from the Missing Kids poster, listing all 17 kids who went missing. If she is, for her to narrate all of this so casually tells us that at least one of those weaponized kids turned out all right after eating a witch. The fact that this prologue is set 2 years after the events reframes the narration as kind of an urban legend, which makes it especially interesting when Maddie says,
"And they never came back."
As we'll see at the end of the movie, the kids do return, but based on Matthew Graff's expression, there's definitely more to the story. I know Maddie says some things in her narration as if she's an outside observer hearing about this story, but at the end of this video, I'm going to explain how this all connects to be one of the coolest overlooked details about this film. Maddie's story takes us through Maybrook Elementary in Pennsylvania. The camera zooms in on the school like it's from the point of view of one of the possessed sprinters that we see in the movie. We follow Justine Gandy, Julia Garner, as she walks into her classroom to find it completely empty except for Alex Lilly. Maddie explains how the other 17 kids in the class the night before at 2:17 a.m. got up from their beds and ran off into the night. Director Zach Cregger, who before this directed Barbarian and came from the sketch group The Whitest Kids You Know, confirmed that the number 217 was at least subconsciously a reference to Stephen King's The Shining, where in the novel and in the made-for-TV version directed by King, the hotel room number is room 217, though Stanley Kubrick famously changed it for his film adaptation to be room 237. You could also interpret 217 as perhaps the ratio of non-missing survivors to the missing kids, like Alex and Justine were the only ones left, the two seemingly unaffected survivors amidst 17 missing kids. Now, the posture taken by the kids as they run was part of New Line's effective marketing campaign for this movie, and there is just something unsettling about it. However, Zach Cregger's script explicitly describes this pose as, quote, like the naked Vietnamese girl covered in napalm from that iconic photo. You know the one I'm talking about, taken by Nick Ut of the Associated Press, called The Terror of War, that depicts a 9-year-old Vietnamese civilian girl who was burned by napalm in a South Vietnamese airstrike on her village. In our last video, YouTube got mad at us for even showing as much of that photo as we did, so we have to show it extremely cropped and blurred, which I find to be very silly for a photo of this historic significance. But it is considered one of the most important photographs in history, as many believe it single-handedly turned American public sentiment against the war in Vietnam. And referencing it strikes to Zach Cregger's deeper theme of the way children are weaponized and have their innocence robbed from them in a violent world. Many, myself included, interpret this film, especially with its giant floating AR-15, to be at least a pseudo-reference to school shootings like the ones at Sandy Hook and Parkland, and how some kids never come back from school, and parents are just left behind demanding answers that never come. As we see the 17 kids run out into the night, we hear George Harrison's Beware of Darkness, and the way these kids sprint, set off the motion sensor lights, and even past some yards where the lights are on inside, sets up the very Ferris Bueller-esque run through the houses and yards that Gladys will do in the final sequence. The movie title, Weapons, appears on screen with a triangle in the O. This triangle is also on Gladys's bell next to the number 6, and a triangle is likely a reference to the triple goddess that's associated with witchcraft, Maiden Mother Crone, but it's also okay to interpret this triangle as perhaps the symbol of many 12-step recovery groups like AA, and you could even see this whole movie as a metaphor for addiction and obsession. It's pretty clear now that that Zach Cregger at least referenced his late creative partner Trevor Moore from The Whitest Kids You Know, who died in 2021 from falling off of a ledge while intoxicated. And this personal connection to the director is one of many reasons I'm really glad Zach Cregger made this movie his own way. He wrote the script on spec, meaning he was not commissioned by any studio, and this script set off a bidding war in January 2023 among Netflix, New Line, TriStar, and Universal, the last of whom partnered with Jordan Peele's production company Monkey Paw. Monkey Paw lost the bid to New Line for $38 million, and Jordan Peele was so mad that he fired its longtime managers Joel Zadak and Peter Principato. Principato is also Zach Cregger's manager, so there might have been a conflict of interest there where Peele might have felt his manager let another studio win this auction so that Principato could get his 10% cut of a higher bid. Either way, you can't blame Peele for wanting to collaborate on a script like this, but I do think it's great that Zach Cregger just directed his own script and was able to further define himself as an emerging horror filmmaker. We see how Alex Lilly was interrogated by the police, and we hardly notice it in these opening minutes, but his father is totally sitting awkwardly when he's out of focus, and it's because he's under a trance in this moment. And the woman we assume is his mother doing all the talking to the cops is actually Gladys, wearing her wig. They gave us all the clues for what's really happening in the first 5 minutes of the film. So we start in the Justine chapter. Zach Cregger's script, inspired by Paul Thomas Anderson's Magnolia, goes character by character, staying in their point of view and jumping back in time in future chapters to revisit earlier events from the new character perspectives. Cregger used a similar structure in Barbarian, but whereas there it was just with one character, here he does it across 6 points of view. And so I like how at this school assembly, we stay centered on Justine. And even though Josh Brolin's Archer Graff stands to speak out, we initially only see him from behind and out of focus in the background because it's not about him yet. Archer is played by Josh Brolin, but he was originally cast as Pedro Pascal, which would have made for an interesting pairing with Julia Garner, considering this movie ended up coming out just 2 weeks after Marvel Studios' Fantastic Four First Steps that starred Pascal and Garner. Julia Garner gives a heartbreaking performance in this film.
Very sorry I am for all of what's happened. I know there's nothing I can say to make this better. The truth is that I want an answer just as bad as all of you. I love those kids. And I know it's not.
She'll be locked up until she tells us what happened.
The only reason Justine is here at the assembly is because she's looking for answers to get through her grief, just like all these parents are. Also, speaking of Elseworld Marvel actors, Benedict Wong plays the school principal, Marcus Miller. Justine drives to a gas station liquor store and she passes by this dude asking for money, who we later realize is Austin Abrams as James, the drug addict. You may know the actor Abrams from his past roles as a younger actor, Ron Anderson from Alexandria in The Walking Dead season 5 and 6, or Ethan from Euphoria, or the kid from John Watts' Wolf's movie. Justine also clocks the F-150 parked facing her, which we later realize is Archer following her home. Back at her home, Justine finds that someone painted witch on her car, and yes, it is a witch behind everything, it's just not Justine. Justine meets her ex, Paul, in a bar. Paul is played by Alden Ehrenreich, another Elseworld Marvel casting as of Ironheart, but really Ehrenreich earned his way back into the spotlight after being, I think, unfairly maligned for Solo, and then crushing it opposite Robert Downey Jr. in Oppenheimer. Justine notes Paul's injured finger, which we find out later came from his incident with James. When they wake up after hooking up, Justine plays Harry Nilsson's Gotta Get Up, which you'll remember as the Reset song in Netflix's Russian Doll series. Though Justine is on paid leave, she follows Alex Lilly home to his house, and right away we see the lawn is overgrown, so something's up. Justine sees newspaper covering the windows and peeks in to see what we later realize are his unkempt parents in a trance on the couch. Justine has a nightmare where she's back in her school and re-enters her classroom to find the kids returned, but their heads are down, showing how these kids are in a kind of subdued state in reality. Meanwhile, Alex's head rises and he's wearing the same garish makeup that Gladys wears, a subconscious clue that she is controlling this kid. On Justine's display board is her lesson about parasites, another clue to the parasitic spell that Gladys has all of these kids under. Our first really good jump scare of the movie comes when Justine wakes up from this dream, and Cregger's point of view camera work really pays off here because he pans the camera laterally to stay on Justine's eye line and then tilts the camera as she just lies back down in bed, and bam, there is Gladys on her ceiling wearing the same makeup Alex was just wearing, and she is planted from her waist down, as she always is in these kind of visions, a reference to how the planted tree she uses is really the key to her power. Justine falls asleep staking out the Lily house, and at night, Out staggers Alex's mother in a trance with a pair of scissors. She pauses outside Justine's window, kind of like the demonically possessed girlfriend in Paranormal Activity, just standing there. And then we stay on this angle as this mom leaves frame, and we just hear the sound of the passenger door opening and then closing, and the shears reach out and cut off a chunk of Justine's hair. On to Archer's chapter. Archer sleeps in the bed of his son Matthew, and we see a machine gun on a video game poster behind him, which might also have been part of the influence of Archer dreaming about that huge AR-15. Archer is obsessed with reviewing his Ring home security camera footage. The importance of this kind of technology really modernizes weapons as a film overall, while making it especially creepy and relatably obsessive to parents like me, who might have seen unsettling things on footage like this in the past. And while it may also date the movie in years to come, technology also has a long history with horror cinema, from cell phones and Scream, to VHS tapes in The Ring, to digital video cameras and Paranormal Activity. Archer checks in with his construction crew guy, and one interesting change from Cregger's script here is that originally in the scene, it was going to be the foreman who messed things up and Archer snaps at the guy, but the way the scene plays out in the film, it's Archer who forgot to place the order for the sod and got the wrong color paint for the front door. So it's more of a commentary on Archer's unraveling mental state. It also better sets up why he has the red paint, which paints him red-handed as the one who painted Witch on Justine's car. And now that we're in Archer's chapter, we see how it was getting rebuffed by the police captain, Ed Locke, earlier that primed him to seek validation at the school assembly, which the scene now shows us with Brolin in close-up to reframe him from being just a random angry parent in the background screaming to a guy whose life is understandably falling apart. And now we don't see Justine in close-up in these scenes, but instead we just follow Archer to his F-150 as he follows Justine and tags her car. But like Justine, Archer is also suffering nightmares. In one, he follows his son into the night and then back to their own house where a giant AR-15 floats above it with 217 glowing from the side. And past horror movie analyses I've done, I've referred to these kinds of things as ambiguous, unexplained horror, like a shocking Cecil B. DeMille shot of just something freaky and supernatural that is never explained in the movie and just serves to rattle the viewer so that afterwards we're all like, did you see that? Did I dream that? Like, The Shining is full of this. But the giant AR-15, if you refuse to see this as a school shooting reference, is at least symbolically a reference to how these children are being weaponized. Archer, you'll notice, also wears dog tags and clearly served in the armed forces based on his tactical speak to Justine later, so he may also just be haunted by his own past experiences. Archer finds Matthew's lifeless expression back in the kid's bed, a bed with Batman sheets, you may notice, which is now some pretty interesting context considering that Zach Cregger has written on spec a script for DC Studios called Henchman. We get another chilling jump scare here when a bright light is suddenly flashed on Matthew and he becomes Gladys, smiling like Pennywise. We jump cut to Archer in the same spot of the frame in Matthew's bed as he wakes up, and Josh Brolin is just so great, channeling the kind of raw, hilarious frustration that he showed as Brand in Goonies. What the f? We spend a bit of time following Archer in conspiracy mode as he chases the red herring of the town radio tower, assuming the kids might be responding to radio waves. Archer approaches the parents of another missing kid, Bailey, and when the mom refuses to share her Ring footage, he waits for the Prius driving dad, Gary, played by Justin Long. Justin Long shows up randomly 45 minutes into this movie without being built for the movie ahead of time, just like he did in Zach Cregger's Barbarian. Archer confronts Justine at the gas station.
Hey, I want to talk to you.
I don't think we have anything to say to each other.
Yeah, I think you have a lot to say.
You and every other person in this city. Believe me, the message is loud and clear. I'm the problem. Got it.
You know what? I think that's the first honest thing I've heard you say. You are the problem.
What, you want to get in my face? You want to threaten me?
I'm not. Nobody's threatening you right now.
You're barking up the wrong tree,
Oh,
okay?
you know what? This whole victim persona that you're taking on, it might have the
Even knowing about this scene from the marketing, the film structure got us so invested in Archer's sleuthing that it really just comes out of nowhere. The look on Justine's face as she suddenly sees something sprinting directly at her in the distance, it's just so unnerving. It's like the shots in Get Out, where Chris initially sees some figure sprinting at him across the dark lawn. And to realize that something is her boss, Marcus, looking like this is truly what the f***. Also, he's wearing a vintage Mickey Mouse shirt, using a specific form of Mickey you might notice that is now legally in the public domain, since as of 2023, it has been 100 years. I feel like someone on this production or at Warner Brothers or New Line knew what they were doing here. Today's video is sponsored by Vessi, which is great. I've been wearing Vessis for 4 years, and this year's trip to Comic-Con is a great example. In the past, I would have to pack multiple pairs of shoes, and it always felt like overkill. Nice looking shoes for press junkets, beaters for walking around the convention floor, and something lightweight for the San Diego summer heat. But this summer, I went with quality over quantity, and I had a pair of Vessies with me, and that was all I needed. Vessi makes waterproof sneakers that are stylish, comfortable, and lightweight. They're my go-to sneakers because there's no compromise. They go with every outfit, and they're durable enough to handle everything your day might throw at you, from dog parks to parking garages to coffee shops and food truck festivals. Lately, I've been wearing the weekend sneaker. Like all Vessies, they're slip-on, fully waterproof, and manufactured without any PFAS materials and completely vegan. From heat to summer storms, Vessi keeps your feet dry and your style on point. Grab your pair now at vessi.com/rockstars with 15% off your first order with a 1-year warranty and worry-free 30-day returns. You're covered for every journey. Justine gets doused in gasoline, and for a while, we are paranoid, especially after seeing her get doused in flammable alcohol earlier, that she's gonna end up living up to being unfairly accused of witchcraft and suffer the fate many of the women in Salem received. But onto Paul's chapter. We learn that he was lying when he said he and his wife weren't happening, and in fact, Donna wants to try for kids and is just on a work trip. Paul is made to feel a bit emasculated by Captain Ed, who is also his father-in-law. So that, plus seeing Justine across the parking lot, plus hearing a radio report about the missing kids that these cops are unable to find, causes him to go a bit aggro when he sees James trying to break into a building, and he freaks out when he gets pricked by one of James's needles. And like the ring cameras of this movie, once again, camera footage becomes the point of it all. Paul's dashboard camera that recorded him sucker punching James. Ed tells him that he needs to just pray that James never comes in to report the incident and wait for the footage to overwrite. And it's in this moment when he gets a text from Justine, which Cregger shows us over Paul's lock screen photo with Diane, the woman we remember seeing pour vodka over Justine. And it leads to a hilarious jump cut where we go directly from Justine hugging Paul at the bar to them fucking. There is a kind of Rashomon subjective reality altering here, where Justine's hug lasts a little bit longer here than the very quick hug that they had in the earlier version of the scene in Justine's chapter, just to show how much Paul really wants this. Paul returns home just for his wife, Donna, home early, to see by the look on his face that this guy fucked up, which is then matched by a similar judgy stare from Ed, implying that Donna told her dad everything her husband did. At this point, we know Paul's life is pretty much over, so he crashes out when he sees James returning to the station. On to James's chapter. James, a struggling homeless addict willing to do anything for cash, tries to pawn some stolen kid stuff and gets a quick glimpse of the missing kid reward poster. He has his run-in with Paul, but now we black out mid-sprint until after the punch to show how he was so concussed he doesn't remember Paul initially tackling and cuffing him. He comes across the Lily house and, noticing the piled up newspapers, assumes it's unoccupied. James rummages through the house and goes to the game and DVD collection, and he's like, "Yeah, Willow!" Which is so funny. And Austin Abrams said that he ad-libbed the line, but only at this last second he sees Alex's parents in the TV reflection, kind of like the jump scare of the alien reflection in the darkened TV in Signs. They're in a trance on the sofa. He finds his soup cans, and then in the basement he finds the 17 kids. I love how structurally this all-important crime scene is first shown to us through the eyes of arguably the least reliable narrator. But it's because he's an addict that his reporting to the police later is not taken seriously, and only Paul, who has a personal gripe with the kid and is in his own crashed out broken state, gets dragged into the final conflict without the full force of the police department on the scene. I love this shot where Cregger mounts the camera on the door as James is frantically trying to get out, so that when he opens the door and daylight now floods the house, we have a perfect shot of the Lily parents marching up behind him. James returns to his campsite in the woods and sees Gladys in her tracksuit in the distance, again planted among the flora, waving at him. So I suppose stealing items belonging to those she currently has under her spell has put James under her gaze. This scares him so bad that he thinks this freaking ghost is coming for him when he stabs the needles through the tent, sticking Paul instead. James takes Paul to the Lily house, where Paul goes in to check it out, but then comes back out hours later under Gladys's spell and drags poor James back inside. On to Marcus's chapter. We see Marcus's side of the phone call with Justine after she inspected the Lily house, as Marcus and his husband Terry grocery shop, and Marcus concedes to invite Alex's parents in for a talk. And now we finally meet Gladys, played by Amy Madigan from The Field of Dreams and Uncle Buck, and in more recent years the horror film Antlers. Gladys claims to be Alex's aunt, the older sister of Alex's mother, but we learn later that's probably not true. She says Alex's parents have been sick with a touch-up consumption, which Marcus questions as an old-timey term for tuberculosis that he only knows from Oregon Trail, suggesting that Gladys's history as a witch extends her back at least as far as the 19th century. But in the days after this movie came out, there's now some reporting that a Gladys prequel film could now be in the works, and I'm so ready for it. We cut to Marcus and Terry's house, where they make 7 hot dogs. This is a tribute by Zach Cregger to his late friend Trevor Moore from their sketch group, The Whitest Kids You Know, in this 2009 sketch where Trevor played the doctor in the scene.
7 hot dogs? 7, yeah.
A day.
Is that high?
It's a little high.
We see in the scene that Terry wears a Minnie Mouse shirt that matches Marcus's Mickey shirt, making them, yes, Disney adults. They watch a nature show about the cordyceps fungus parasitically controlling an ant, which not only is another reference to the parasitic spell of Gladys in this movie, but also might be the same Planet Earth segment that Neil Druckmann said that he watched when he conceived of how cordyceps would work in the Last of Us game that later was adapted into the HBO series. Gladys appears at the door and talks her way in, asking for a bowl of water, and Amy Madigan is just delightfully evil in the scene. She produces this little branch with Marcus's school ribbon wrapped around it. She cuts her palm with the branch and smears her blood on the branch, and then cuts Terry's hair and rings her bell, which has the triangle and the number 6. So why 6? Well, 666 is known as the number of the beast from the Book of Revelation, associated with evil and the devil in common folklore. So maybe 6 next to the triangle is kind of a reference to 666. But this bell gives Gladys control over Marcus, and now when she wraps Terry's hair around the bundle and snaps it, Marcus turns on poor Terry, spewing black bile onto his husband's face and headbutting him to death. So Marcus's bugged out eyes are really caused by his own skull injuries. Gladys stops the violence by dropping the twigs in the bowl and then repeats the ritual with Justine's hair. So that gives us the recipe: branches from the special tree, plus an item belonging to the person you wish to weaponize, plus the blood of you, the controller, plus the hair of the target, the bell to activate, snap to pull the trigger, and then water to cleanse the enchantment. We now see Marcus's sprint from his perspective, confusing the shit out of people as he runs through town and beelines to Justine at the gas pump. Archer's protective instincts kick in as he fights Marcus, kicking him, tackling him into the cooler, and then chases after him, seeing poor Marcus get sideswiped, and what happens to his head? Can't show it here. At this point, Archer and Justine know that darker forces are at play and they are on the same side, and they triangulate the path to the Alex Lilly house. And finally, Alex's chapter. Alex hears Justine's parasites lesson. Alex's dad explains how Aunt Gladys is moving in, and that Gladys is actually the mom's aunt, like the sister of her mom. But she could really be like a great aunt, lying about which generation she's part of, because Alex's dad later says they haven't heard from her in 15 years and she didn't attend their wedding. So who knows if she's actually related to anyone in this family tree, or if this is just one of the many families she's parasitically latched to over the years. Aunt Gladys moves in, she wears a cancer wig, and she's bringing with her this potted tree. So the fact that this witch is dying out suggests that if she has been doing this with a number of families, all those other families basically dried up, and her ability to parasitically control people has really backed her into this corner. Like, if you have any questions about whether this witch is that logically powerful, just imagine she's at like the end of her rope and she's desperate, and rethink of the movie that way. So what is this tree? In my other video, I wondered if this was a blackthorn, because blackthorn does have historical associations with the staffs of witches, but based on its prickly leaves, I'm wondering if it might also be a holly tree, because wood from holly is also said to have been used in magic, but it's more commonly used in white magic. Like, holly was the common wood used in the wands in Harry Potter. Harry Potter's wand is made out of holly, and in lore, Merlin's wand is holly. Cregger hasn't confirmed what kind of tree this is, and I'm guessing it's not based on any real life plant. Alex's quiz tests them on analog clock times, and the last question that Alex doesn't get to looks like the answer is 2:15, which would be on the way to 2:17, but I don't think any of the answers on this test are ones where the minute hand is not on the 5s. But 2:15 is later when Alex wakes up hearing Gladys begin the ritual that later gets activated 2 minutes after that. Alex's parents don't pick him up, he has to walk home and finds Gladys now having them under her spell. The next morning, both are still sitting exactly where they were, and Gladys looks healthier, showing how she is leached off of their life force. She goes through the branch ritual to force the parents to stab themselves in their faces. Gladys threatens Alex that she can make his parents eat each other, which first incepts the idea in Alex's mind that devouring is one way this can go. We see a montage where Alex has to spoon feed his parents soup, takes the bus to and from school every day, shops for more soup, and when Gladys needs even more life force, she requests that he retrieve objects of his classmates. Alex steals the name tags off of their supply bins. Gladys rips up these name tags, puts them in a bowl, spits on them, and then rings the bell at 2:17 a.m., summoning the 17 kids to the Lilly house. Now we revisit the opening sequence from Alex's point of view. Alex's interrogation by the police, and how Gladys made up Alex's father's face and says that he suffered a stroke. Gladys snips off threads from the kids' PJs to send them out into the woods when the detectives come by. Alex comes home one day to find Paul under Gladys's control, as well as James, and now that she is specifically threatened, Gladys guards a room that contains a tree with Alex's parents and a line of salt. Justine sees Paul outside the Lilly house, but it's a trap as she passes another borderline assault, triggering Paul and James to attack Justine and Archer. Justine peels Paul's face with a vegetable peeler. Yuck! James's tussle with Archer, meanwhile, causes both to spill over into the basement. Justine gets a hold of Paul's sidearm and shoots him in the neck, but no effect. And then in the side of the head, Alex crosses the upstairs salt line, triggering his parents, and gets to Gladys's bedroom with the tree, but doesn't find her there, making us wonder, well, where is she? And as the parents pound into this room, he snatches a piece of the tree and Gladys's cancer wig and goes into the bathroom and completes his own version of the ritual using one of Gladys's natural hairs that he plucks from the wig, which is why it was so important that he saw her with her weird natural braids earlier. As Archer searches for Matthew in the basement, Gladys jumps out at him and snatches his dog tags, which allows her to get control over Archer, who starts strangling Justine, and Justine almost dies, but Alex completes his own ritual and snaps the branch at the right moment, and just that sound, and what I assume is Gladys feeling her sudden loss of power, alerts her that she's now the target. Amy Madigan is awesome here. This leads to one of the most satisfying and hilarious climaxes I've ever seen in a horror film. Gladys has to Ferris Bueller through the neighboring properties, followed by a legion of 17 screaming feral children. It culminates in one continuous long take as a girl in pink pajamas chases Gladys through a backyard deck, through multiple rooms of a house, and then onto the front lawn where it all ends. We obviously can't show you everything that happens with, the specific details, but basically the kids rip her body apart, using their hands and their teeth, pulling off her limbs, drawing and quartering her, and ripping apart her head, pulling it up from its jawbone, which, if you think about it, makes her final moment of consciousness a permanent open-mouthed scream of pain that will never end. The children are the weapons. This witch's death releases her spell from Archer and from Alex's parents. Justine finds Alex hugging them, and she gives off a relieved smile, but the parents' expressions are still vacant, and Maddie's narration returns. Alex's parents are still being fed soup somewhere, but not by him. He moved to another town and lives with a different aunt. I hear that one is a nice lady. So it's kind of sad here, right? I suppose the parents are left in this comatose state because of the duration of time they were under Gladys's spell. Meanwhile, Archer was only under that spell for like a few minutes. And based on the final line, there's even some hope for Alex's parents to recover someday, because we end with Archer's son Matthew on his shoulder with a similar vacant expression. When Maddie's opening narration said, "and they never came back," this is what she meant, but only by the time she started telling us the story, because now Maddie ends his story with all of the kids in his class got reunited with their parents. Some of them even started talking this year. So based on the exact wording of this final line, I do think it's possible that the Maddie narrating this story is Madeline, one of those 17 kids who herself just started talking this year to tell us this story. And the movie we are now seeing is the true story finally coming out 2 years later. Now, Zach Cregger has opened up about his lingering grief over losing his friend Trevor Moore and how that grief never really goes away. But that doesn't mean we are doomed to be broken, traumatized, weaponized monsters for the rest of our lives. It's just that our ability to heal and manage that grief does take time. And I hope anyone who watched this movie and is watching this video might be able to take some of that meaning away from it, or at least you enjoyed a very scary and intricately crafted horror film. Thank you for watching and allowing me to take a second crack at this. Comment down below with your thoughts, and a special thanks to one of our YouTube members, Marisa Miranda, who supports us at the executive producer level. Follow me at EA Voss. Subscribe to all the channels in the New Rockstars network for breakdowns and news coverage of everything you love. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.